What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Pod, Monday edition. Nick Whalen, Alex Barutha, hanging out with you. Alex, very busy weekend in the NBA. Busy Monday, by the way. 12-game slate coming our way. A lot of back-to-backs. Had some injuries as those continue to pile up late season. Want to talk about another pretty big waiver period in the RotoWire Stake League, at least, as we try to load up for the final few weeks. We'll answer plenty of questions. If you got them, throw them in the chat. We'll get to as many as we can throughout the show. Alex, I do need to, of course, start by victory lapping my massive Kyle Filipowski edition in the RotoWire Stake League. After getting stonewalled on Valanciunas and Zach Collins last week, I had to instead massively overpay for Filipowski.
Look, I finished third in that bidding. I dropped Brandon Ingram, and I tried to pick up Filipowski. You bid $24 in our $100 budget. Aaron Quinn bid 19, and I bid 17, and the next highest bidder was 4. So clearly, 3 people have a very opinionated, very optimistic opinion about Kyle Filipowski. But I don't know why you wouldn't. He's been playing amazing, and I think it's just going to continue the rest of the season.
I was worried. I joke about massively overpaying because I guess I really didn't. It just felt very weird typing in 2-4 for Kyle Filipowski. But I mean, is he one of like 3 reliable assets in Utah the rest of the way? I like he has not missed a single game since December 21st. Like he's been completely exempt from all of the rest that the Jazz have been doing. Like I still think there will be games every now and then where we do see Markkanen, we do see Collins, and then all of a sudden, maybe you regret starting him in that given night. But it feels like at least one of Markkanen, Collins, Keontae George now feels like he's kind of being rested. I know it's a foot injury. Jordan Clarkson, Walker Kessler, like at least a couple of those guys are going to be missing every single night. And, Filipowski, it's not just, cheap points. It's not just, 3-pointers. He's giving you rebounds. He's giving you assists, occasional defensive stats. Like he's a legitimate good pickup, outside of just kind of being the last name standing in that league.
Yeah, he, on the RotoWire player pages, we have percentiles, right, for advanced stats. Where does this player rank in assist percentage and steal percentage and everything like that. Filipowski, the only 2 stats that he is below average in as an NBA player are block percentage and turnover percentage. Every other thing he does, he's average or above league average. So, per 36 minutes, he's 16 points, 10 boards, 3.5 assists. He'll get you a steal, decent 3-point shooter. So like the perfect ad for a 16-team league where you're just you're looking for potentially numbers across the board.
I'm hoping there could be even a little higher upside the rest of the way too, because he's not even playing that many minutes. Like he's giving you, like the other night, 25 points in 31 minutes, 17 points in 27 minutes, 23 points in 29 minutes. Like if they really extend him, if they give him a 36, 37 minute leash, we're talking about somebody who could be like a borderline top 50 guy for the rest of the season. So I felt like I had to pounce. Like I don't know where else I was going to be spending that money if I didn't go and get Kyle Filipowski. I'm also right on the border between buying and eating in this league. This is one where you want to finish inside the top 8. Doesn't matter where in the top 8. And if I didn't make this move, I don't think that was going to happen.
Well, that's the thing too. I mean, we're talking about a league that ends before April starts.
Yep.
And it's a roto league. So like you just spend your fab. Like who's gonna, like maybe someone emerges in the next 2 weeks, but our waiver period only runs once a week.
Yep.
So yeah, just spend the money if you have it.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for giving me some confidence on that one. Cause again, it felt bizarre. I had to part ways with Rashawn Holmes, by the way, who got hurt last week in order to add Filipowski. I know Jordan Hawkins ended up going for $20 in that league. I think that was close to unopposed. I certainly thought about Jordan Hawkins. Wasn't going to throw $20 on him. But I'm looking at my lineup for this coming week, Alex, and this is a weekly lineup, true weekly lineup league. You set it before Monday's games, and you can't change it till the next Monday. And as of right now, I think I'm going to start Filipowski over CJ McCollum, who started to sit some back-to-backs. And the minutes have been down in general. Pelicans only have 3 games this week. None of them are back-to-backs. I guess I expect him to play all 3. But it's starting to feel like we could see some even more severe deprioritization of McCollum. And I guess if that happens, Hawkins would be one of the guys who could benefit.
Yeah, Pelicans play 1 fewer game than Utah. And they play the Clippers and the Magic, which are 2 very strong defensive teams. And obviously, Utah's going to play Boston today. and they play Memphis, Toronto, Minnesota, and that's another good stretch of defensive teams, but it's one more bite at the apple. And Filipowski is probably just going to be out there 30 minutes regardless of what happens. Like, I know
Right.
what I mean. So
Yeah. I felt like that was that an easier decision maybe than it should be. Andrew Nembhard, what was heavily bid on in that league as well, ended up going for I believe $9, but there were like three different $9 bids, so it went to a tiebreaker. A bunch of people had some keep him honest bids on him as well. Were you interested in Nembhard?
I just wasn't sure where I would start him potentially.
Yeah.
Like, I need a steals, and he's actually been a very sneaky source of steals this season. So since the new year, he's averaging 1.8 steals. In addition to his 5.4 assists, 10 points a game on efficient shooting. So in a 12 teamer, he's not someone who is necessarily a priority ad. But again, as the year gets later on, you are category hunting.
Mhm.
And he was someone that I certainly thought about.
Yeah, other notables. Jared Vanderbilt was picked up. Obviously, the Lakers. LeBron goes down. Dorian Finney-Smith is out tonight. Rui's still out, so should be plenty of opportunity for him. I was wondering, Drew Holiday was re-picked up. Somebody dropped him a week or two ago. I looked at it, Alex. It's still weird in a 16-team league to see a relatively healthy Drew Holiday sitting out there. I just wasn't interested.
He's been pretty ineffective as a fantasy player, to say the least. I mean, again, that New Year sample, 9 points, 4 rebounds, 3.5 assists, and a steal. It's 22
Rough.
fantasy points. I mean, in a 10-team points league, there's not even a point in rostering him. Even a 12-team, 14-team, maybe even. It's just not. So, yeah, I mean, at this point, Holiday is like a fringe 16-team fantasy player, especially because we're talking about a Celtics team that's comfortable sitting a bunch of guys. They'll just let Pritchard go off, and we haven't. It hasn't even gotten bad yet. They're doing it more, but come late March, who knows?
And yet, there's still going to be a game where Holiday goes like 5 of 8 from 3 in the Eastern Conference Finals. Like we know that's coming. I want to ask you about the Toronto Raptors in general. As someone whose team is kind of built around Scotty Barnes, I'm not loving what's going on. This is the second or third time we saw this on Saturday. They ended up losing at home to the Wizards. Second or third time in the last couple of weeks that they have just pulled all their starters with about 7 or 8 minutes left in a obvious attempt to lose a game. I mean, I wouldn't say we haven't seen this before because we have, but I don't like. I just don't understand it. Like, why are you not taking more of a Utah approach? Like, why even put yourself in the position that you might win like they did last week against Orlando when they clearly did not want to? Do you think we see some just altogether more aggressive rest from Toronto at some point?
Maybe. I don't. It's a bit. I kind of feel like you're in a zone where the league might have something to say about this, because I actually feel like what they're doing is almost worse than
Yes,
just sitting all these
100%.
guys. So I don't really know what the precedent for this is, but yeah, if I have any of these guys in fantasy, I mean, they're usually still touching about 30 minutes, high 20s. It's not abysmal, but who knows what happens in a week or two if they do decide, maybe these guys can start missing some games.
Yeah, the Orlando game last week, that's the one. I think that was last Tuesday. That's where this really came to the forefront, and Orlando or Toronto ended up winning on a buzzer beater anyway. I forget who even hit that, but regardless, does not necessarily matter. But Scotty Barnes since then has played 29, 30, 32, 27. So it's enough that you're still getting reasonable production out of him. Like on Saturday, still gave you 18 points, 4 assists, 2 rebounds, 4 steals. I'll live with that. But I worry that we're going to start seeing more of that going forward. Like when do they pick and choose when to try to actually win a game? I don't know. But I think you're totally right. I was going to ask you about that. Is it worse than just outright listing guys out? I think this is worse. I think this is totally worse. I think it's like less competitive somehow. Like the act of pulling your starters in a close game is worse than just never playing them at all.
Yeah, the optics are way worse because you're actually the person who sits down and watch the game sees it happen.
Yeah.
Right. And I know that they probably, if you're Scotty Barnes, if you're Barrett, if you're whoever, like you want to play, and I'm sure you would rather play for 29 minutes and sit out the last 6 than not play at all.
Yeah.
But again, it's just not, it's kind of risky territory what the Raptors are trying to pull off here.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw you officially drop Brandon Ingram as
Oh
well,
yeah.
which it was time. It was time, unfortunately. Turn the page to next year, I guess, for Toronto. Other notables from last night, we did see the return of Rudy Gobert. And yeah, wouldn't really read too much into the workload for anybody with Minnesota because this game got completely out of hand. Minnesota put up 37 in the first quarter, really pushed the lead out. Excuse me, I'm still sick if you can't tell, in the third quarter. But I thought Gobert looked pretty good. I mean, there were whispers early last week. Like I was digging into like really deep corners of Timberwolves Twitter trying to find updates on Gobert. There were some whispers that he might be done for the year, and came out and looked like himself. I thought played 20 minutes, 16 points, 8 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals. Didn't have a block shot, but that's not all that rare for modern day Rudy Gobert. Still wouldn't be surprised, if the Timberwolves are careful with him on back to backs, but I will cautiously at least be firing him up in at least one lineup this week.
Yeah, on back to backs, I wouldn't be surprised if he sat. But the reality is they've been playing fine without him,
Oh yeah,
and they're all for the playoffs. So like there's maybe some seeding stuff they could try to get into, but there was no point in rushing him back. I mean, they've won 5 in a row.
yep,
The last time they took a loss of 10 or more points was February 10th. And that was basically the first time since like early January. I mean, they've been one of the hottest teams in the NBA very
yep.
quietly. Um, so yeah, I mean, in your situation in fantasy, I think you could start him this week.
Yeah, they do have 2 days off too to begin the week. It is just a 3-game week for Minnesota, so that's kind of the downside. If he does end up missing one of those, I'm going to be taking a pretty big L there. But 2 days to rest, and then they're at Denver on Wednesday. After that, a pretty doable schedule for the next couple of weeks. I think this run could continue. They get Orlando Friday, Utah, Indy, New Orleans, Indy, Phoenix, and Detroit to finish out the month. Indy and Detroit, those are not pushovers by any means, but avoiding a lot of the big dogs, at least for the rest of March, and picks up a little bit in April, but pretty friendly schedule the rest of the way. I mean, I think you're right. The fact that they're clearly a playoff team, that does worry you a little bit from a, how much you're going to extend this guy perspective. I also think they want to stay out of the play-in though. And right now they are tied for that 6-7 with Golden State. So I think there is enough on the line here that they'll play their guys as long as they're healthy.
Yeah, I guess they are really going to be fighting with the Golden State for that spot. We'll see if Houston's going to get. It seems like they're going to get VanVleet back soon, if not tonight.
Yeah.
But they've kind of been slipping without him, and they're missing Amen Thompson now for I think 2 weeks or so. So yeah, there's a little bit of a battle going on there.
I'm debating if VanVleet is cleared tonight, do I throw him out there? Do we get the usual horrible game or two from him when he comes back from injury?
I actually don't know if that's worth it.
I think I'm going to wait another week. They have a back-to-back on Friday, Saturday too. He'll probably sit one of those. Yeah, I don't know. Not a position. VanVleet might be on the list of guys that it's just not worth drafting, at least for me. All right. We're going to do a couple ad reads, and then we will get to the chat. We obviously have not talked LeBron or Amen yet, but we'll hit that. Saw some questions on both of those guys. But first, we are brought to you by Edge Boost. Have you ever had your debit card declined or had to call your bank at 3 a.m. in Vegas? Edge Boost is the first consumer-facing online bank dedicated to the gaming industry. There are a ton of benefits to using Edge Boost, like $250K per day in debit deposits, unlimited withdrawals, cash back on sports betting, DFS, sweeps. You deposit $25, you get $25, 100% approval for all gaming activity, financial segmentation for discretion and responsible gaming. It's compatible today for prediction markets, iCasino, DFS, sports betting, lottery, brick and mortar casinos, horse racing, and sweeps. No transaction reviews, no account freezes. You can go to edgeboost.bet. Do it right now. Use our promo code ROTOPOD, ROTOPOD. That's promo code ROTOPOD at edgeboost.bet. We're also brought to you by Pool Genius. Obviously, March Madness is coming up. Do you want to win more in your March Madness, your golf, your football pools? Pool Genius gives you data-driven picks and strategies to outsmart the competition. With over a decade of analytics and historical data, Pool Genius is the only site dedicated exclusively to helping people win sports pools. With Pool Genius, users win 3 times more often than expected. RotoWire listeners get exclusive offers over at Pool Genius. Just go to poolgenius.com/RotoWire for up to 55% off or to start a 4-day free trial. That's poolgenius.com/RotoWire. All right, let's get down to brass tacks here. Talk a little LeBron, a little Amen Thompson. Both guys going down over the weekend. Big Gucci John says, I have LeBron and Amen in a points league. Playoffs are in 2 weeks. Should I drop them or stash one of them?
I think you have to hang on to both of those guys, right?
I think so. Well, I think the question here is, are you in the playoffs? Will you safely make the playoffs with no contributions from those two, perhaps over the next 2 weeks? I mean, neither timeline as of right now is extending beyond 2 weeks. So I think the idea of, if you're in a good position to make the playoffs, can you go into the playoffs without those guys on your roster and feel good about advancing? Like, probably not. Like, I think they're probably a huge part of the reason why you might have a chance to win this thing. So you're not going to find anything close to comparable value on the waiver wire.
No, not unless your league is insanely shallow. But yeah, I can't. I mean, if you had to drop one, it would be Thompson because he's out. It seems like he's out longer.
Yeah.
It's not 100% clear, but it seems that way. I would do everything I can to hold on to both of these guys. I mean, Ahmed's averaging 35 fantasy points a game. LeBron's higher than that. It's just these guys are, you're in tough territory dropping them, because what if you drop them and then someone you're going to play in the playoffs picks them up, and then it's
they
like,
will.
oh, you actually just lost yourself the playoffs by dropping. So it's a very tough spot. It's sometimes, like, I hate to be too like defeatist on this. Sometimes you just lose your league because of stuff like this. It just happens.
Yeah, very possible. I think unless you're just looking at this and saying, I'm not going to make the playoffs, unless I bring somebody in, at that point, maybe you just have to do it and just try to figure it out when you get to the postseason. But I think you got to hold on here and hope that it's closer to a week and a half for these guys. Talked about this earlier in the show, but Kenny says, what do we do with Raptors starters? He's got playoffs starting next week. I mean, again, I guess at least they're not just missing complete games. If you still have the ability to trade, maybe you could try that. But anybody paying attention knows what's going on. I don't know, man. It's just brutal. I think you just kind of lop off like 10 to 15% of your expected output and just say, whatever RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickley and Scotty Barnes, whatever they're doing in 27 to 28 minutes, that's kind of the new expectation.
Yeah. Again, you can't really drop these guys. I dropped Ingram, but that's an entirely different situation.
Right.
Because our update from like 4 days ago was he's going to be reevaluated in 2 weeks, and it's like, okay, come on, like let's be real about this. But the rest of them, I don't think you can do anything. Maybe trade them, but again, who's buying?
Yeah, if you even have that ability, yeah, it's brutal, man. It's brutal. But again, I know it's like more embarrassing for them to be pulling starters in games, but at least you're getting some production as opposed to just having to play that game where you hope Lauri Markkanen is out there twice in a 4-game week. All right, we'll go for something a little more optimistic here from Dennis. He said, who to add this week? Alex Sarr, Day'Ron Sharpe, or Bub Carrington?
Yeah, I mean, I'm encouraged by the fact that Sarr has played 4 games in a row.
Yeah.
And, Rashawn Holmes is injured. So maybe that gives Sarr a better chance of continuing to play and not getting these like weird rest spots for his ankle. I just wish Bub was more consistent. I thought he was going to play more minutes, but then it's like the Wizards traded for Chris Middleton. So that's taking up some usage. I think the move is Sarr. Sarr and Sharpe will probably end up having comparable total numbers because of the schedule. Washington plays 4 games. Brooklyn obviously has that massive 5-game week. But then for the following week, Sarr is just going to be better in theory.
All right, good question here on the 76ers. What is going on in Philly? Should we be afraid they're going to shut down the shutdown guys? Nick Nurse is monitoring minutes. I don't know what was going on against the Jazz yesterday. Bizarre rotations all over the place. Paul George is going to miss at least a couple more games. I think the shutdown could be coming for PG at some point. Obviously, Tyrese Maxey could be in that same boat. This is one where it's like there's opportunity all of a sudden. It's like you see Adem Bona putting up 14 and 15 with 5 blocks. Lonnie Walker's going off the bench. So, like in some ways, I think if you play this right, you might end up with guys who are all of a sudden fantasy starters for a couple of weeks because the rotation is just so pared down. But I think trusting and projecting this night to night is going to be almost impossible in the short term.
Yeah, I mean, they signed Lonnie Walker. He goes for 25, 11, and 5 Against Utah. You mentioned Adem Bona. Oubre is going to have his moments. I can't. You could try to pick a couple of these guys up, but again, night to night, it's going to be almost impossible to predict. I think outside of, I mean, in theory, Grimes and Oubre should be fine, but again, who knows? Really, who knows?
I mean, they played a really competitive game that was in the mid 120s against Utah, and I know Grimes had 4 fouls, but he only played 27 minutes. Like that's still a little concerning. Oubre played 20 minutes, also had 4 fouls in 20 minutes, but still, and like Yabusele, I haven't seen anything as far as like injuries. I mean, he started and played 12 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's horrible. It's horrible.
Yeah. This does suck for Grimes.
By the way. We need to, like, as a, as like a fantasy basketball community, it's March 10th and we're just, it's over. Like, it's done. We need to, every time that this happens, we need to just stop the fantasy season here. Like, and probably a week ago, like if playoffs should have started and ended, everybody's league should have been done a week ago.
Yeah. I guess maybe in fantasy we could do what we've been asking the NBA to do and just do like a 50-game season.
Yeah.
It's rough, man. I guess maybe that's the harbinger for future seasons. Like as soon as the Raptors pull their starters, like down 2 in the middle of the fourth quarter,
it's like
the fantasy season just ends right there.
It's kind of like the Elam ending. So like when Raptors start pulling their guys, 2 weeks, that's all you get.
Yes.
That's it. Season's over in 2 weeks. Do what you got to do in fantasy.
Yeah. The clock just auto starts on whatever your provider is. Good question from James on Zach Collins. He said, what should I do with Zach Collins? Is he a hold? Will Zach Collins start next to Nikola Vucevic, who by all accounts is going to be back tonight?
Yeah, I have Vooch in our 16 team stake league. Interested to see how that works down the stretch. Will he start next to Vucevic? I don't think so, but I think he can. I think they'll probably share some time on the court together. And I really have no like inside knowledge. There's no precedent for this. It's just purely like, why are you playing Julian Phillips and Dalen Terry at power forward when you could be playing Zach Collins there and then like slide Buzelis down to the 3 and just do that? So I would hang on to Collins at least for this next game and maybe another one just to feel things out.
Yeah, I think that's fair. All right, we have a Adem Bona or Aaron Nesmith question. Who has higher upside as an ad this week?
Just cancel fantasy basketball. Upside probably Bona, but only because it's like if he's gonna play 30 minutes, he might get you 10, 10, and 2.
Yeah,
and I think in theory that's a better line than whatever Nesmith is getting you. But I would just be worried that Bona would suddenly just play like 14 minutes the next game and
give big time risk there. I mean, it's worth noting that yesterday Drummond was sick and missed the whole second half, so that's part of the reason Bona went off. But again, Yabusele was ostensibly available and they just didn't play him. I still think the answer, if it's who has higher upside, I think it's definitely Bona. Like we just saw it. I know that Aaron Nesmith is not capable of the type of game that Bona put up yesterday. I know it was against the Jazz, but I think if you're just looking for pure upside, it has to be Bona. All right, we got another Sarr or Dayron Sharpe question. We already talked about that. Kool-Aid Trippin says, is Chet playing tonight? It was reported in Athlon Sports. Not sure how legit they are. Also, Chet not on the injury report. Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, again, not on the injury report as of today. There's no hard and fast rule, I guess, that he can't play back-to-back. He just hasn't since he's come back. There's no need necessarily for him to do that. There are no back-to-backs in the playoffs. So I guess I wouldn't be surprised if OKC does kind of pull the rug out on us later today, but they also don't tend to operate that way. They're not one of those teams that's usually, sneaky with the injury report. So it's totally possible that he's just, he's been back for over a month now and they just kind of want to start getting him fully reintegrated.
By all accounts, it seems like he's going to play. Like Nick said, he's been back for a while. At some point, maybe just let him play back to back.
Yeah, we go by the injury reports, and as of right now, he is not on the injury report. But we'll update that later today if need be. Excuse me. We'll go a little deeper on Yabusele. Is he cooked rest of season? Asked Justin. even when he gets the minutes, he does poorly. So I don't imagine it getting any better with Nurse deciding to cut back on minutes. Also, does Drummond have a future? I guess we can just make this more of a general post Embiid center discussion for the Sixers.
I think Yabusele is a drop. Like Justin mentioned, he hasn't done anything useful in like a month and a half. Averaging 20 fantasy points over his past 15, essentially. It's just nothing. I mean, Yabusele is someone who just he needs other people better than him to succeed. He just can't do anything on his own. And then Drummond, yeah, he got sick and sat out the second half last night.
Mm-hmm.
Are they going to push him to 29 minutes regularly like they did in early March, late February? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, how much does he really affect winning? I don't know. So in theory, you could maybe play him, but I would rather have Drummond than Yabusele. That is for sure.
March 10th, baby. This is fantasy basketball. Andre Drummond or Gershon Yabusele rest of the season. Another depressing injury-related question. Kenny says playoffs start next week in his league. Is Anthony Davis a drop? 9-cat 10-team league. So, I mean, should at least be some viable options out there. Last update we got on Anthony Davis was Friday, and the Mavs said that he's improving and has been cleared for more on-court movement.
The previous update was that he may be shut down for the season.
That's right.
So, to me, if your playoffs start next week, this is really tough. This is much more difficult than I don't know if this is really that much more difficult than the do I drop LeBron or Amen Thompson. I think there's less of a chance Anthony Davis plays again than LeBron or Amen Thompson this regular season. And I don't really know how to read between the lines in this because there's you could look at this both ways if you're trying to just get a feel on what Dallas is doing, right? Optics, if you just sit Anthony Davis the rest of the season, that's horrible. This is a disaster at the end of the season. On the other hand, why would you even consider risk playing him again? That's insane. That's crazier to me. But that Dallas is operating like insane people anyway.
Well, we've already seen Dallas back out of the play-in a couple years ago, right? They've done this before.
That's how they got lively.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're 1.5 up right now on the Suns for the 10. It's I think you kind of owe it to the roster and to the fans to some degree to play for that. Realistically, though, are you going to make it out of the play-in? I don't. To me, it's less about trying to get that 13th pick in the draft than it is about preserving Anthony Davis, right? It's the worst case scenario is you kind of push him to come back and he twists that knee again, in game 79, and all of a sudden you got more questions this offseason. I don't know if you have the benefit of just waiting as long as you can. I would just do that, right? I mean, chances are we'll get some sort of update on Davis in the next week, and hopefully you have a little bit more information to inform that decision. If there's somebody out there on the waiver wire that you really want to grab, maybe you just bite the bullet and do it. I mean, Davis, the thing is, Davis is going to be a complete monster if he's out there. There's just no one else to do anything. He's going to put up massive numbers. But it really feels 50-50 to me. I would not be shocked whatsoever if we get the alert that they are just going to shut him down. As bad as it is optics wise, I would hope that the basketball fan deep down inside of these Mavs fans' bodies would realize that is probably the smart decision.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a lot of teams do stuff like this before. I mean, I always think of the Pelicans. I mean, you and I have those Zion updates that are he's doing more, he's doing this on-court stuff, he progressed, and then it's oh, a setback, oh, he's not, and then it's February 1st, and he's actually he's just done for the year. After 3 positive updates, a negative update, 2 positive updates, and it's just so we got the big negative update, now we got a positive.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens.
All right, our Max Strus and Justin Edwards holds this week in a 14-team league.
Strus, I think Strus is a fringy 12-team league player, or a 14-team league player. Sorry, Justin Edwards probably also in that same category. I mean, he's had 3 solid games in a row, but it's nothing that's been really a standout. I mean, past 3 games, 14, 5, and 2, right? I don't think you have to hold either of these guys.
All right, I have LaMelo and Gobert on IR, and I need to drop 2 of Vassell, Beasley, or McDaniels. Playoffs start soon. Other teams decimated with injuries. Should I just hold them to not help anybody out?
If you can make the playoffs with just holding those guys, I would wait as long as possible. If you don't need those guys in your lineup, just hang on to them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. McDaniels has been incredible, by the way, or at least was incredible when Gobert and Julius Randle were sidelined. Obviously, looking at a little bit lower ceiling now, but yeah, if you can do that without pulling those guys off IR, and then you just do it before the playoffs, I think that's a little bit of gamesmanship involved there, but nothing wrong with that. Paul says, would you drop Paul George and Anthony Davis? They're on my IL and IL plus, and I have guys active every other day like Cam Thomas, Keontae George. I also have Monk injured in my active lineup. Playoffs start next week. Well, we already talked about AD, so we'll handle the PG side of this.
The 76ers, like we alluded to with their rotation and what they've been doing, have given no indication that they want to ever win a basketball game again.
No.
So again, it's really hard to drop these guys because they are so good when they play, and if they come back, you're going to be like, oh, I dropped Paul George for, I don't know, Max Strus, and like, what was I thinking? And these things, I don't know. Are one of these guys more droppable to you than the other? Like, is Paul George definitely more droppable than Anthony Davis, or is this just like we're in such unknown waters that you can't even? There's no take really to give.
That's a good question. I mean, the debate is someone who has played recently. Has played within the last week in Paul George. He's been ruled out for tonight's game, but in theory could be back later this week. Versus obviously Davis just not knowing if he's going to play again the rest of the way. Like I'm pretty confident that we'll see Paul George out there. The big difference is that Paul George has just not even been good when he's been active. Like I just pulled his last 11 healthy games. So this is like starting February 5th, ending March 4th. So basically a full month. He averaged 14 points, 4.5 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 2 steals. That's good. 43% from the field. So it's like that on top of Nick Nurse outwardly saying, yeah, we're going to start looking at minutes. Like, what is the upside ultimately with Paul George? Like, what are you holding out for? Whereas if Anthony Davis were to come back, he could conceivably give you like 28, 14, and 5 for the last month,
That's
true. So I would actually be okay dropping Paul George just because the upside's not that high when he's out there.
Yeah, I guess, man. I guess.
Yeah. Joseph Kim says playoffs start week 21, but I have AD, PG, Norm, Monk, Avdija, and Amen all injured, with Walker, Mark, and IQ in and out. That being Walker, Kessler, Mark Williams, and Emmanuel Quickly, I assume. I don't know my build anymore. I'm in the playoffs, but which 3 or 4 of these guys should I drop? Man, this might be the hardest question we've ever had.
I don't know my build anymore. Yeah, that's you don't have a build. You're just trying to make sure the foundation exists, I guess. Who would what 3 or 4 should I drop? Playoffs start week 21. I wouldn't want to drop any of these guys.
Well, I mean, I
know you're trying.
I'll throw a Paul George. I think you can drop him. Maybe the Davis, cloud of mystery, kind of puts him in that category as well. Like Walker Kessler has not played more than 2 games in a row since early February. Like is there a question of just how viable is he anyway? He's basically playing every other game for the last month.
Yeah, part of the he's been so good when he plays though. It's that's what makes it really frustrating.
He's been awesome when he plays. Yeah, he's coming off of 18 and 25 with 8 blocks.
Yeah, because you're like, okay, so he plays every other day, but even if you slice his stats in half, he's still essentially giving you like 8 points, 8 rebounds, and almost 2 blocks.
Yeah,
it's a game. Like if you were to play him, so it's just like, man. I just like I'm actually perplexed by this question. I don't like I feel like I have no good advice to offer because all of these guys, I don't think I would. So I feel like I would not drop Norman Powell. I would not drop Malik Monk. Maybe I'll start there because I think those guys have shorter term injuries. I think they'll come in and be fine, and I think they'll play down the stretch. I have no reason to think Norman Powell is going to sit. I have no reason to think Malik Monk is going to sit down the stretch. Deni Avdija, it seems like it's a short term injury, but we're talking about the Portland Trailblazers, so. Who knows?
Yeah, Avdija, I'm pretty optimistic that it's short term, but he hasn't been ruled out for tonight yet. It's a late game against Golden State, so we'll see. Then they play Wednesday against the Knicks and have 3 days off until Sunday's game against Toronto. It's like if he can't come back, during that stretch, then maybe add him to the list. But I would be hesitant to drop him as well. I don't know, man. There's we can always speculate so much on the injury timetables. We have no more information than is out there right now. So just keep your eyes peeled on rotowire.com. We'll give you the updates as soon as we have them. Is Tre Jones worth a pickup, or should I hold on to Podziemski?
Tre Jones, I mean, he scored 20 season high the other night. He's had some nice games. His past 6, he's averaging 14 points, 4 assists. He's going to have some decent nights like when Lonzo or Kobe White sit, right?
Yeah.
But the usage, I don't think is really there when you consider like how much Josh Giddey has been taking over the ball. Buzelis is having a lot of usage. Vucevic is coming back.
Yep.
So I think I would just rather hang on to Podziemski, even though we don't really have great specifics on how long he's going to be out.
Yeah, it feels like it's really tied to the health of Lonzo Ball for Tre Jones. And Lonzo's doubtful for tonight's game. So he's likely to miss what would be a 5th straight game. Doesn't sound like he's particularly close with that wrist injury. So I think for this week, there's probably more there with Tre Jones. Now, if Lonzo's back next week, all of a sudden that maybe reverses. But this is to me a classic. Like, do you just need to maintain, or do you need to gain ground? Because if you need to gain ground, I think I would take the risk on Tre Jones. If you're just looking to kind of hold water here for the next few weeks, maybe you stick with Pods.
Yes, I will say about Tre Jones, these past 6 games where he's averaging 14 points, he's shooting 64% from the field. So he's more like 10 points.
Pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah,
fair.
I will mention
that. James said he just traded Scotty Barnes for DeMar DeRozan. Okay.
Strong.
Nice work.
Strong move.
Very
if
nice
you don't
work.
need the steals and blocks, that's a total win.
Yeah. Big time stuff there. Cole Anthony, is he good for the rest of the season?
Yeah, I mean, Jalen Suggs is done.
Yeah.
And Cole Anthony's really inconsistent. That's been his biggest problem basically throughout his entire career. But his minutes have been, mostly consistent lately.
Yeah.
Since he entered the starting lineup on February 5th, he's averaging 12, 3.5 rebounds, 3.5 assists, decent shooting percentages, really high from 3, 1.6 made threes on 48%. He's not a must roster player in 12-team leagues, maybe even 14-team leagues, but you can certainly hang on to him.
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's see here. Playoffs start for me next Monday. I added Lauri Markkanen this morning. You guys think he plays this week? Good question. Lauri Markkanen he's been upgraded to questionable for tonight's game against Boston. If he does play, that would be his first game since February 22nd. I don't know, man. They're doing something different with everybody on this Jazz team. Like Kessler's like every other game. Clarkson seems to just be out forever. Markkanen, you never really know if it's a real injury or not. I guess it probably is if he's missed this many in a row. I think there's a decent chance that he plays a game this week. It's just, how many, right? Like, is he ever going to play 2 games in a row the rest of the way? That seems 50-50 at best.
He might play a game. Fair enough. And yeah, Edey, for context, the past 8 games, basically 10 and 10 with a block and a half on 59% shooting, which is good, but it's not even really a must roster guy. I mean, you probably should, but to me, that move is kind of a wash, actually. I just have such little confidence in Markkanen, but I totally understand why you did it. Especially if you need points and threes. Makes sense.
Yeah. Is Collins a drop now? Asks Brian MC.
Probably wait and see.
Yeah.
I would wait and see on this. Because again, they have no forwards that are good besides Buzelis, and he can play the 3. So like I would love if they are you talking about Zach Collins?
I was thinking John Collins.
Yeah. See, I don't even know anymore. Yeah. What
right.
Collins are we talking? I don't know what anyone's rotation is.
Ironically, both of them could be droppable.
Yeah, both. Well, yes, both of them. I think they are both droppable.
We'll see. We'll see on Vucevic, man. I mean, Do we think the Bulls want the 10 seed? I think they do, right? They
Okay,
might not have a choice. They have a 3.5 game lead.
Brian is specifying that this is about Zach Collins.
Okay, Zach Collins. There we go.
Do the Bulls want the 10? I don't think they have a choice. I think the 10 is theirs.
Mm-hmm.
I think it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And so if you're going to get it, you may as well just play your guys and just may as well be competitive, right? I mean, you're just below you, they're 3 games up essentially on Philadelphia. Philadelphia's trying to lose. So
yeah. All right, we'll do a couple more. Jeremy says, I have LeBron and Luka with playoffs next week. If LeBron doesn't come back, who's the pickup from the Lakers, if there is one? Or will Luka just drop 70 every game? Yeah, I mean, this has kind of happened throughout LeBron's career, right? Where there's not just like the LeBron replacement. And obviously when you have Luka on the roster, it becomes pretty easy to just shift everything over to him. Reeves obviously gets a boost. We'll see more Vanderbilt. We'll see more Dorian Finney-Smith when he's healthy. I think Rui would probably be the guy if he were healthy. But he's still dealing with the knee. Maybe we see a little bit more Dalton Connect. Like the Lakers probably need to replace LeBron's scoring more than anything else. Maybe the rebounding too. It's like the playmaking can pretty much all shift to Luka and Reeves. And all the guys that we mentioned are not really capable of like backfilling what LeBron does anyway.
Yeah. So right now I'm on our on-off court page. I'm taking LeBron off the court, starting with the trade deadline. So, which we have that ability to choose dates on our on-off court page, which is fantastic, obviously. First of all, I will say Doncic sees a 15% usage bump. Averaging 36 points, 11 rebounds, and 12, basically 36, 12, and 12. In terms of guys who you could, in theory, pick up, no one really sees a big usage bump. There's some Trey Jemison stuff. Obviously, you're not picking him up. There's a little bit of Shake Milton going on. That's 5% increase. Dalton Connect, 4% increase. And everybody else is a wash. It's extra 9% to Austin Reeves, who's averaging 31 points per game per 36 without LeBron on the court on off. So it's just, I think they're just going to funnel as much usage as possible between Doncic and Reeves and probably Hachimura. But I guess if Hachimura was dropped, he's gonna miss the road trip. That's a problem. Maybe Connect. Yeah. Maybe you just take another shot on Connect, and say someone's got to score points. I could see Vanderbilt also playing a ton of minutes because he's been awesome for them. So probably Vanderbilt or Connect.
Yeah, I think that's fair. All right, a couple more. I'm just running out of steam here with my throat, Alex. Apologies for all the coughs on the stream today. Joel says, how many games do we think Fred VanVleet will play this week? I would say 2 or 3. And we still don't even know if he's going to play tonight against Orlando. If he does, then I think he would have a good chance to play again on Wednesday, but they do have a back-to-back on Friday and Saturday. So I would expect VanVleet to miss one half of that. It's against Dallas and Chicago. Both games are at home. Both are probably very winnable without him. So I will say 2 or 3 on that one. All right, last one, Alex. Who would you prioritize to fill your center slot for this week in a 9-cat? Jabari Smith, Alex Sarr, Adem Bona, or Naz Reid?
I think I'm just going to stick with Naz Reid.
Yeah, I think so too. He's the name that jumped out to me.
He's been playing so well. It's hard. He played 27 minutes in the last game when Gobert came back, but we talked about that was a blowout. He could have probably he could still play 30 minutes a game. He just played. Him and Vanderbilt played so well when Gobert was out. I have a hard time believing it's going to be all right, Gobert, 34 minutes a game, and these Naz Reid and McDaniels, you're just done. So I would just ride the hot hand with Reid.
Yeah. I mean, even if you look at the last 15 games before Gobert went down, Reid's still giving you 16 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, a block, a steal, good percentages, high volume threes. You're not getting anything close to that dependable night to night from any of those other guys. All right. Great stuff as always, Alex. Good questions in the chat as always as well, guys. We always appreciate those. I will be back with Brandon Kravitz later this week, likely on Wednesday. We'll have Kieran and Mike with their usual episode as well. And then one of the final true big time waiver wire episodes of the year coming on Friday. We'll, of course, keep doing this pod throughout the NBA season. But as we get to the playoffs, we get to the end of a lot of leagues, start switching the conversation a bit toward maybe some betting content, some playoff conversations. But still plenty to happen here over these next few weeks. Alex, best of luck to you in all your leagues. Same to all the listeners, and we'll talk to you soon.